So just the existence of buses wasn't enough. Buses with Chinese speakers or Mandarin speakers in them wasn't enough to be itself alarming.
Justin Trudeau testifying on foreign interference is looking pretty nervous. There's a lot of oohs going on in this. Now, this is a very long video. It's over 4 hours, but I've gone through and I've cut out the best sections for you guys to get a sense of this. I should note here, he came very prepared and very buttoned up. He obviously had a lot of practice or some sort of rehearsing of the events and thought everything through very carefully. And you can tell this, I'll point this out throughout, but when he's very confident with it, he's giving very direct answers. He's answering the questions. And when he gets caught a little bit off guard is when the that stuff starts. And it's very apparent when he doesn't like a question. So let's jump into this.
Our witness this afternoon is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Can I ask that the witness be sworn or affirmed?
Should we be sworn or affirmed for the record?
Sworn, please.
Should you please state your name for the record?
Justin Trudeau.
And do you swear that the testimony you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you. Can you paint for the Commission a picture of the foreign interference landscape over your tenure as Prime Minister?
One of the things that we had grown concerned about as a party when we were in opposition before the 2015 election was the lack of oversight by parliamentarians into what was going on in our national security universe in this country. We witnessed the significant foreign interference allegations or threats during the 2016 presidential election in the United States, where Russia, certainly through misinformation and disinformation online, attempted to interfere. But also, more interestingly, as a key example, in 2017, during the French presidential election, there was actually a moment in which officials within the French governmental apparatus actually had to come out and tell the citizens of France that a particular piece of information or news that was about to break was in fact Russian disinformation and should not be given any weight or heed. That got us to reflecting on whether or not Canada had a potential to intercede in an election campaign if there was a significant threat of foreign interference impacting the ability of our elections to actually unfold in a free and fair way. So we got to work on developing such a mechanism here in Canada. We actually brought forward and created the G7 Rapid Response Mechanism, which was designed to monitor and respond to threats of misinformation and disinformation in our democracies, a tool that has been successfully used over the past years since in a number of different occasions, and indeed was more recently actually strengthened to weigh in a little more on the democracies in Eastern Europe, where we're seeing significant interference by Russians given the conflict in Ukraine.
So you can see here the misinformation, disinformation thing. He was called on that a while ago. He used the wrong one, and since that time, I can't remember which one he used, but he used like misinformation. He's supposed to use disinformation. There's another one too, malinformation. At this point, there's too many of them. But so anytime he says that now, he says both those words. What's interesting here is you're going to see the same Justin Trudeau that we always see. What's he doing? He's blaming Russia. He's blaming other countries. He's blaming world events. And you'll see further on in this, he blames Harper.
Okay, thank you for that summary. What I'm going to try and get at now is the threats, really, to which all of this responds. So the top of that document there talks about the Chinese foreign interference threat, and it says, the CSIS describes the PRC essentially as sophisticated, pervasive, persistent. There are other countries around, but the PRC is the big one. So, Mr. Prime Minister, I'd like you to speak to those points if you can.
There are foreign state actors who are interested in playing a role in our democracies or in disrupting our democracies. We were very aware of the areas in which we needed to challenge or contest China, whether it was on issues of human rights or democracy, of Uyghurs, of protection of the rights of our diaspora communities. The relations with China took a significant turn when they chose to arbitrarily detain 2 Canadian citizens. Saw the president of China, Xi Jinping, at the opening ceremonies. I mentioned to him that I needed China to stop interfering in Canadian democratic processes, because that was very much something that people were very concerned about back home at that particular moment.
We all know how that conversation went. It's, hey boss, I'm supposed to tell you that please stop interfering with Canada. Okay, where's the money? Give me the briefcase. So we look at his body language here. So he is obviously you can see he's stressed, he's nervous. He didn't look like he slept last night. When he answers questions, he's laser focused in and he's looking down. His general gaze is looking down. It's straight, but straight across and down. Looks like he's not really focused at any one. He's looking at some blank spot. He's trying to just stay on track. When he breaks out of his planned answer, that's when he starts doing the ahs and oohs. We'll see it more as this goes on.
CSIS gave a briefing to the security cleared representative of the Liberal Party about foreign interference in the Don Valley North riding. How did this play out from your perspective?
Late in September, as I was coming through Ottawa, I believe I was on my way out across the country for another stretch of campaigning. I believe it was on a Sunday as I was heading out after Saturday with my family. Mr. Broadhurst met me at the airport in a holding room in a lounge on the government side of the airport, government terminal in the airport, to let me know of concerns that he had received from the site task force and CSIS about the nomination campaign, the nomination election, the nomination race contest in Don Valley North. He shared with me that intelligence services had shared with him concerns that Chinese officials in Canada had been developing plans to possibly engage in interference in the nomination contest, specifically by mobilizing buses filled with, and the challenge in this is always trying to pick out what I heard exactly then from what I knew later, but I believe it was either buses full of students or buses filled with Chinese speakers or Chinese diaspora members who would be mobilized to support Han Dong, who would have been mobilized to support Han Dong in that nomination contest of a few weeks previous. In what ended up being probably a 20-minute to half-hour conversation with Mr. Broadhurst, I asked him more specifically about, okay, so they had plans or an intent or a capacity to do this. Do we know that they did? Did you hear from CSIS and the security agencies that this was actually done? They weren't entirely certain. There was reasons to believe that perhaps it has, and perhaps the indication was that there were buses filled with Chinese speakers at that nomination contest. I asked if, and as a matter of course, those who are in politics and certainly on the ground riding politics know that it is regular for buses to be mobilized in particularly in contested nominations of community organizations, student groups, a particular seniors residence could bring a minibus full of seniors to participate in a nomination contest. So just the existence of buses wasn't enough. Buses with Chinese speakers or Mandarin speakers in them wasn't enough to be itself alarming or a condemnation, but there were clear indications that there were concerns by CSIS that China might have been behind this, and that those students or those individuals on the bus might have been motivated or mobilized to vote in that way, and there were concerns that CSIS had. I asked the extent to which they were certain that it happened, the extent to which they were certain that China was indeed behind the mobilizing of the bus or buses. And I also asked whether or not CSIS had information that Han Dong knew about this, whether he was witting and aware that China had mobilized, or Chinese officials had mobilized buses for him or not. And the answers were not clear from CSIS at that point, according to what Mr. Broadhurst told me. I then I also asked if it was a close nomination, if there was a sense that the actual result of the nomination could have been affected by this bus or buses or what was there, and that wasn't clear at all. CSIS didn't have any conclusions to share at that point. I asked Mr. Broadhurst whether CSIS was making any recommendations or suggestions as to what we should do with this information. And it was clear to Mr. Broadhurst that this was very much about just letting us know so that we know and could perhaps take any actions that we deemed appropriate, but they weren't going to be recommending for us to take action of one way or another. But they also specified that this was secret information that we could not share with the candidate in question, Mr. Dong, or the public at large, in terms of what they were telling us about these concerns and these allegations. I then asked Mr. Broadhurst what the Liberal Party processes that are in place to oversee nominations, particularly contested nominations, had flagged around that nomination contest of a few weeks before.
So to break this down real quick for people, so what most likely happened here is the Chinese government either sent over a bunch of Chinese students or just found a bunch of Chinese students that were going to one of these schools here and said, hey, you're gonna jump on this bus, you're gonna go vote for Han Dong in this election, otherwise we're gonna threaten your families here back in China, because China's dirty like that. They'll do dirty things like that to their own people to get what they want. Trudeau here looks like the most nervous, lying fool I've ever seen. He's just staring off into space. He's really trying to focus in on, what he's supposed to say, like, Mr. Broadhurst, where do I get a bratwurst? Like, he's clearly trying to separate himself from Han Dong so he can take the fall. This is Trudeau. He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He's just like, oh yeah, I heard about it, but I couldn't say anything, so it's all Han Dong here. It's not me.
And Mr. Broadhurst assured me that they had looked into, when they heard these allegations or this information from CSIS and CITE, and had no flags on the nomination process. So then I had what was a brief conversation with Mr. Broadhurst after we had established all that, to sort of agree that the threshold for overturning a democratic event like an official party nomination to find out who would be the candidate for a general election, particularly during an general election, must have a fairly high threshold for removal of that candidate. And that was really sort of the binary choice we were placed with in that situation. Acting would be removing Han Dong as our official candidate. The other choice would be not to remove that candidate. But even not having removed that candidate, it would be something, given this information, that we would have to revisit. Certainly in the case that that candidate got elected, there would be questions we would have to follow up on after the election to properly understand what happened and what the issues or the risks were in this situation. But understanding that the decision to remove someone needed a high threshold, a threshold that incidentally I have met and seen many other cases. As Liberal Party leader, I have on many different occasions had to ask people to step down or step away or desist as candidates for the Liberal Party. As most recently as the last election where we did that in the case of a downtown Toronto riding. But in this case, I didn't feel that there was sufficient or sufficiently credible information that would justify this very significant step as to remove a candidate in these circumstances.
So where does that leave you? So you don't exercise that option, and you put it as a pretty binary choice there, but you have this information, you receive this information, it's, as you say, classified information that you can't share. What are you able to do? Where does this leave a political party receiving this information?
Well, it meant that after the election, when we were out of caretaker period, where I went back to being primarily prime minister and not simply leader of a political party with 338 candidates across the country, I was able to turn to our intelligence agencies and say, we need to know more about this. We need to understand what the context is, because the answers that we get on that will have a bearing on choices we could make in the future about different roles or responsibilities for an individual in such a situation.
Okay. Going to move on to some other things now, because we have a lot to cover in 70.
So he basically just said, I knew about it and I did nothing. That's the sum up here. And look at this smug smile. He's feeling relaxed. He's like, oh yeah, I got through that one. No more Han Dong questions. God.
An incident that was reported by the RRM in the 29th election had to do with an article published in the Buffalo Chronicle, some misinformation, false information about you specifically. Is that something that came to your attention in the 2019 election?
No, it did not.
No, it did not. Okay.
Sorry, the engagement of the site task force or the panel or anyone into that issue was not something I was aware of at the time. I was, of course, aware of the quite disgusting false conspiracies or allegations being shared by both the Buffalo Chronicle and a significant number of conservative politicians.
Okay, so you were aware of the article, but not how, let's say, the apparatus was dealing with it.
I may have been aware of the article. I was certainly aware of the allegations and the accusations that were heinous and untrue in that.
Okay.
So the article she's talking about, I believe, is this one here from 2019, Buffalo Chronicle. You can see up here, 2019, 10/19, the date, so it's October 19th. Trudeau's West Grey accuser was much, be careful which words I use on here. Anyways, and this article alleged that Justin Trudeau right here was, Mr. Trudeau loves to teach French to kindergarten students. He was lonely and depressed for months, one friend told the Chronicle. At the time, Canada's age of consent was 14 years old. In 2008, Prime Minister Stephen Harper changed the law, raising the age to 16, where the law sits today. Still, Canada outlaws fun times between people who are younger than 18. That's the allegations there. The yearbook from that class he taught from that year is one thing that is 100% accurate. If you look at that, it's really hard to find, actually. There's a girl in there that had wrote, so I found the quote here on True North, the image is gone. It seems like a lot of this backlog of stuff is getting scraped off the internet. Quote here from the yearbook from the grade 12 students at the West Point Grey Academy, which is WPGA, where Justin Trudeau taught. We've also got a photo of him here. I believe that is from, West Point Grey Academy yearbook right there. And there he is too. They're given an opportunity to write grad shoutouts to thank their friends and family and an informal section of the printed yearbook. A female student who True North decided to not name, will refer to as the synonym Jane, wrote the following message in her shoutout. To the Empire, JT and CI, thanks for making my life at West Point Grey Academy a lot more interesting and amusing. So JT obviously probably referencing Justin Trudeau, how many JTs were working there at that time. Justin Trudeau won't comment on what this means. There's allegations that his family paid this family $2.2 million. There's all sorts of stuff. So that's the rumor here. That's what's being talked about here when she brought up that article, I do believe. I don't know of any other scandal at that moment in time that coming from the Buffalo Chronicle.
It's essentially a report on the 2019 election, not on the outcome of the election, but on the operation of the site task force and the panel. Mr. Clerk, can you scroll down to the third bullet, please?
Actually, could I just quickly look at the box? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the third bullet. Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so what they say here is pre-election intel briefings and monitoring provided a baseline assessment, suggesting that foreign interference would be commensurate to overall interference campaigns. While some instances were noted and some TRM as a threat reduction measure were taken, none of these activities met the threshold. This places the level of FI and GE 2019 below the anticipated baseline. Is that consistent with the information that was being provided to you about what happened in GE 2019?
Yes, this was a report in January of 2020, so 3 months after the election. I would have already have been briefed multiple times by the clerk and by others that their conclusion was that the elections in 2019 were indeed free and fair, and the outcome was not affected by foreign interference, either overall or in the specific riding contests.
Okay, so now let's leave 2019 and move to the 2021 election. Possible People's Republic of China foreign interference related mis or disinformation. So what we have here, if you can scroll down past the caveat page, Mr. Clerk, is a summary of essentially allegations of misinformation about the Conservative Party, its leader Aaron O'Toole, and I think Kenny Chu is in there as well, that were circulating during the 2021 election. So my question to you, Prime Minister, is this something that you were aware of as it was occurring in 2021?
During the 2021 election, no. Shortly after the 2021 election, when the Conservative Party went public with its concerns in the sort of the week that followed, I learned about it through media reports.
Okay. And were you aware that the Conservative Party had raised those concerns with the government as well?
Not at the time, but later I would learn that through briefings.
Okay.
Months later.
The rationale was expressing a preference for a Liberal Party minority government. The rationale was they don't perceive any of the political parties as being particularly pro-China, but perceived minority governments as being more limited in terms of enacting anti-China policies. So this reporting of an expressed preference by certain PRC officials for a Liberal minority, was that something of which you were aware at the time?
No. As I said, both the 2019 and 2021 elections happened in a context of significant tensions between our government and the government of the People's Republic of China, particularly over the illegal and arbitrary detention of 2 Canadian citizens, the 2 Michaels. We were extremely active both in pushing back at Chinese officials on this issue, but also, as I said, active around the world in drumming up support for people for different countries for the two Michaels, but also support for an initiative we were taking around arbitrary detention. And how it shouldn't be used as a tool of political pressure or achieving political goals. So, I can certainly say that while individual officials may well have expressed a preference or another, the impression we got and consistently would get is that the actual People's Republic of China would have no it just would seem very improbable that the Chinese government itself would have a preference in the election.
So
He short-circuited there. He's like, I'm out of oohs. I got nothing, man. I'm not buying it, Trudeau.
I take it from this that whatever intelligence reporting there was on that, it did not reach your ears.
No.
Okay. Thanks. You can take that down now, Mr. Clark.
And there's also the issue of the difference between foreign interference and attempts by different countries to influence behavior. Diplomats around the world are in their roles to try and influence favorable behaviors by the countries in which they're serving towards the country they represent. That is big part of the role of a diplomat, of a foreign official, of all types. Canadians certainly take an active role in furthering our interests, including from time to time having certain preferences around what might happen or might be an outcome of an election or a particular domestic debate in a foreign country. However, foreign interference happens when there's a full proper definition of it somewhere, but my understanding is where it's covert, where it's coercive, where it is using pressure or particularly untoward means other than having a diplomat express, I really hope you should sign this trade deal, it'd be good for both of our countries, as opposed to trying to strong-arm people behind the scenes to get them to sign said trade deal or whatever one might examine. So for a diplomat to express a preference, whether it be personal or tactical or what have you, is not in itself foreign interference. It may be attempts at influence. It may not be anything other than the regular concept of diplomacy.
So it would be the actions they take to further their preference that would constitute potentially foreign interference.
And certainly in the case of China, we have seen regularly that many examples of this commission that there are clear actions that would amount to or indicate a willingness to engage in foreign interference.
That was a very long-winded, added extra bit to a question that was already answered. It seems like he wants to cover his tracks. He probably thought like, ooh, that's not enough on record. He knows he's on record. He knows he has to say the right thing here to cover his butt. He really wanted to make it clear that diplomats, sometimes, they're just... They're just making a deal. It's not foreign interference. Mr. Speaker, there's a dog crossing the road, and did it interfere? It could be foreign interference. This next clip here of Justin Trudeau, he's basically blaming the Harper government in his testimony. This is just, the guy can't get over it. Just stop blaming Harper. 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, it doesn't matter how many years ago, this guy just keeps blaming Harper.
There have been calls for the government to do more than it's done already to address this and to protect Canadians. And in particular, I'll just read you a small excerpt of the former MP Kenny Chu when he was testifying here. He said that experiencing what he'd gone through in terms of the potential PRC misinformation, well, we don't know PRC, but potentially PRC related misinformation, disinformation, potential foreign interference, He said, it's almost like I was drowning and they were watching. And the best they could do, by the way, is to let me know that I'm drowning. I don't need their notification. I need their help. So, Prime Minister, I'd like to hear your response to that. And essentially, maybe in providing this response, help set the stage for the second phase of the Commission's work.
Starting by perhaps taking a bit of a step back and the idea that we need to do more, I agree. When we took office in 2015, there was very little, if any, mechanisms to counter foreign interference. Yes, our intelligence agencies did good work, but the idea or the priority of protecting our democracy, particularly when it comes to misinformation, disinformation, active engagement in various diaspora communities or electoral events, was not on the radar at all when we took office. It hadn't been something that the previous government or any previous government had done much on at all. So we started from a standing start.
This guy.
We created the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. We created NSIRA. We moved forward to the Rapid Response Mechanism, and we've continued to do more. Yes, the panel for the 2019 and 2021 elections site, but we've continued to do more. We recently brought in a National Security Committee, National Security Council of Cabinet to address sort of strategic threats on a larger level. We're continuing to give more tools and powers and learning from what the P5 was able to do in 2019 and 2021 that they'll be able to apply in the 2025 election when it's likely to come. There is always...
What does that mean, when it's likely to come? Did anyone else just hear that? When the election is likely to come? Are you going to be invoking the Emergencies Act and canceling the election? Like, what does that mean, Trudeau? That's very disturbing. It's coming. The election is coming. It's scheduled. Unless you somehow invoke the powers to remove the election or take it away or something.
More to do, and one of the things I'm very much looking forward to coming from the work this commission is doing is to make recommendations on how we can strengthen even further the protection of institutions and of our democracy. But that's only half of it. The other half is giving Canadians confidence in their institutions and their democracy. And whether it's a diaspora member worried about stepping up to running for elected office in this country because they're worried about the impact that might be real or perceived from a country they chose to leave many years ago for whatever reasons, there are real concerns and feelings involved. And ultimately, democracy only works when people are confident in its ability to keep them safe, but also be the articulation of what they want for their community and their country. That's where confidence in the integrity of the elections in 2019, 2021 is so important, and something that we have emphasized throughout this process, that every briefing I've ever got from all my intelligence and security experts is that those elections were indeed free and fair, and nothing we have seen and heard, despite, yes, attempts by foreign states to interfere, those elections held in their integrity were decided by Canadians. But the feeling that individuals can have that maybe our institutions aren't so strong, maybe they are impacted by foreign actors who wish to do ill to Canada and to Canadians, is something that we need to be very, very thoughtful about. And one of the ways ultimately to keep ensuring that our democracy is safe is to make sure that citizens themselves are engaged, active, critical thinkers who are empowered to see what is information, what is misinformation or disinformation, and be robust in their right to choose whatever direction they want for the country. And we've seen with the intensity of misinformation and disinformation, not just from foreign actors, but just on social media generally in many pockets, that it's not automatic. Democracy requires constant vigilance and constant hard work. It didn't happen by accident, doesn't continue without effort. It's not just effort of commissioners and politicians and spooks. It's efforts of every single individual to feel like they have the full ability to engage in our democratic processes and to feel that they are safe and protected as they engage, whether it's as a voter or a candidate or an elected member of parliament or of provincial parliament or wherever. These are things that we all need to continue to work together on. And I am in constant awe of everyone across this country who continues to put up their hand and step forward in a time where it's getting more and more difficult and more challenging to be part of public and political discourse.
I thought he was going to say he's in awe of the basic Chinese dictatorship. This guy, to say people have to step forward and step up, like, oh God, man. People are suffering, dude. You're causing it.
To say, no, I want to build my country for the better. I want to contribute to my community, and I'm going to step forward into a place where I'm going to take slings and arrows, particularly members of diaspora communities. But bringing in that diversity of Canadians' experiences is the only way to make sure that we're actually building the kind of country we need to be for the future. So I salute everyone who steps up, and will continue to commit myself to making sure that those feelings of confidence and of safety as we engage as citizens or more as our democracy are protected.
Yeah, that's that's enough. That's enough. This goes on and on and on. There's a whole bunch of questions, and a lot of them are reiterating. There's different people ask different questions, but that's the gist of it. Those are the highlights. It's really hard to stomach that much Trudeau, and honestly, by going through all this and then going through and filming this, because I like to scrub the videos first and find the good stuff. I've watched hours of Trudeau today, so I'm going to put this video up for you guys, and then I'm going to go for a run to detox because I'm feeling just gross. It just, the stuff he's saying, that like blaming Harper, man. The foreign interference is Harper's fault. Oh, he didn't put in the things in place. Han Dong, yeah, you know, he's a good guy. I didn't know anything he's doing, but yeah, he was totally fine. God, this guy is just unbelievable. You can see it, the brief moments there when he kind of goes off script, and then he starts, you know, he opens up his body language and starts kind of a little bit more loose Trudeau, and then when he's really focused in, laser focused, like his eyes are like this, that's when he wants to make sure he's answering the questions very precisely, that his, you know, his lawyer or his whatever, his cabinet members, whoever's preparing him for this testimony. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about this. I think it's just absolutely vile. Like that last section there where he's talking about Canadians stepping up and all this. It's like, this is gross, man. There's a clip I'll share in another video of the carbon tax protest where there's kind of like one of the head guys who's organizing it, and he's talking to the cops about what's going on. The cops they're kind of like, oh, why are you guys here? And then he like breaks it all down, and then all these other people start showing up, and it's like, that guy is feeding single mothers out of his own pockets because he owns a convenience store. Another person is making food for all these other people because just people can't afford food and they're starving. They have kids that are starving. And it's like, for Trudeau to say, oh, the community's stepping up, it's just, oh, it just makes my skin crawl. I absolutely hate this man. Share your thoughts down below. Thanks for watching the end of the video here. I don't blame you guys if you had to skip through or watch it on 2x speed. It's a lot of Trudeau to handle in one day. Stay tuned. We've got the budget dropping on April 16th. We'll see what kind of tax measures he's increasing, or Chrystia Freeland is increasing to pay for all these billions of spending. Be sure to subscribe. I'll keep you informed with all honest, real, uncorrupt news here. We'll keep fighting for freedom. I'll see you in the next one.